Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. We're just waiting for a couple more people to jump on. Thanks for being on the call this morning.
All right, perfect.
Good morning, Ben. How are you?
Good. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. I think that was my fault.
Gotcha.
Technology stuff, you know.
I know.
All
right, good to go.
I was going to give it like 2 minutes to let everybody jump on. I usually do that.
Okay, perfect.
In the meantime, it's nice and sunny out today, so it's a little cold, but at least, you know, at least the sun's shining. I miss the sun at this time of year. I don't know about you, but
I know it is definitely a challenge to stay motivated.
yeah. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Well,
Joe's our fellow advisor at our firm, so
Okay.
he's going to be joining us today and in this awesome discussion that we're prepared for. I'm really excited to have you here. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for letting me get on and talk about the business.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting topic for our clients. We know we hear a lot about these situations from clients, so I think it's going to be really interesting, and hopefully you'll get a bunch of questions. Did you want me to pull anything up, or are you
No,
you good to go? Okay, I just didn't know if you had any extra slides or anything. I wanted to double check. I didn't think so, but sometimes last minute people throw that at me.
Sure.
So,
do you are these mostly local people, or are they around the country, or
I mean, I think one person that's on there is local, but also travels. I mean, we have a lot of clients who are snowbirds, or they go to like Florida, Delaware, North and South Carolina, sometimes Arizona, and like Colorado. I would say maybe they have a home base here. We have quite a few clients who have moved away but are still clients. So
no,
I mean, I don't know if it matters from a state perspective, but in general, a lot of the stuff probably applies. So
yeah, for sure. And it's just there's Oasis is a national organization, and so just know that there's potential that there's an Oasis person wherever they're at. I mean, we think we're about 90 businesses across the country.
So if somebody local or from somewhere else had a question, they could of who to contact, you could probably get them to the right person.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's good. That's good. Okay. Well, I mean, I've given it 4 minutes. I think everybody's jumped on. So what I'm going to do is just dive in here and then turn it over to you in a couple of minutes. Everybody welcome. It's nice to, well, I don't see everybody, but you can see us. We also have our newest advisor from the firm, Joe Pizor, who's joining us today, who's a wonderful asset, but also going to be jumping on more of these calls with us. And of course, Ben Meyer, who's a senior living advisor with Oasis Senior Advisors of South Hills. And Ben is going to tell you more about what he does, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but he's come very highly recommended by other contacts that we have in helping families that are thinking about or transitioning someone, you know, possibly into a facility, and all of the things that come along with that, and placing them in a facility. And we know that, you know, I know so many of you clients who are sort of either in that sandwich generation where you might be, you know, caring for your parents and helping them out and caring for children, or you're just doing one or the other. And I think as we have an aging population, this is going to continue to become more and more of an issue. And one of the things that's really important to us as Stein Wealth Advisors is, even if it doesn't directly impact us, it impacts you financially and mentally when these things are happening. And we want to be a resource and let you know that, you know, we're always surprised that people don't know that there are more resources out there, like Ben and attorneys and elder law. people who specialize in helping this transition, because it's really complicated. So anyway, I don't want to steal your thunder. We're going to be on here for, anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour. And I'm sure Ben's going to open up and ask for questions. And every once in a while, we might ask him a question. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Ben, and just let you take it from here. And we'll have, a great discussion today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Appreciate you letting me jump on today. My name is Ben Meyer, and the business is called Oasis Senior Advisors. Just a little bit of a background about myself. Not originally a Yinzer, not originally from the Pittsburgh area, but I grew up a farm kid in Iowa and moved around a little bit before we settled in the South Hills here in the Pittsburgh area. So I did grow up a Steelers fan because I cheered for the Hawkeyes on the weekend, and then kept the black and gold going on Sunday. So definitely feels like home here that we moved and are able to settle here. Although last weekend was pretty disappointing, but on to next year. So
yeah.
We'll see how that goes. Yeah, but yeah, so that's a little bit about me and about my as a senior advisor. Exactly what she was talking about is helping families in a transition process when they're looking at senior communities and senior living. So Oasis is a franchise system, and so it's my investment in the franchise, and it's my business here in the area. So you work directly with me, and if you are around the country as a franchise system, you'll work with other business owners across the country. If you're in a different state, or obviously we have advisors in Florida and Arizona and all the big retirement communities. So, as far as a little bit more about the process, so I'm a completely free service. So that's when I want to get that thing right off the bat there, to tell people that by working with me, we will never charge you anything for our services to you. So we'll never get a bill. There's no catch. There's no hidden things behind the scenes that we're going to get you on the backside. Just by calling us doesn't mean that you're going to ever see a bill or ever get charged any money. So the way that we're able to,
there's not very many free things in this world anymore. I mean, that are truly free. So I know it's nice to know that.
I know. So the way we're able to provide for my family, because I know everybody's going to want to know, well, how do I make a living? So the way it works is I have agreements and partnerships with all the majority of the communities in the area here. And that's going to be the same for the other business owners across the country. They're going to have partnerships with those local communities. And when we help somebody find a community and move into that community will give us a fee for those services. So that's how we're able to be free for the seniors and the families themselves. So, and then even though people may think that it's a cost and that the community is probably going to charge us more because we utilize Ben, when in fact actually we're able to work with the communities a lot more and actually get some deeper discounts potentially by working with us, because we know the sales representatives, we know the communities, we know what they like to offer and can offer, and so we're very familiar with this system and very familiar with the communities themselves. But in terms of along those lines, a big part of what I do is try to provide education for seniors and their families. 70% of individuals in their lifetime are going to need some sort of senior care.
Yeah.
So it's just statistically, it's probably going to happen. And in fact, that I found that there was a statistic out there that 90% of spouses haven't talked to their loved ones or their family members about what their desires are for what they would like for the senior care, like what type of care they would need. If we ever get to that point, what are your desires when you get there? So
those are difficult conversations to have.
Right.
I think that's why people don't have them. I mean, it's hard to talk about them because the people that are going to experience them don't often want to face it, right?
Right.
And then it's awkward for you to ask your mom or your dad or your aunt or whoever it is, well, hey, if this sort of potentially in your mind terrible thing happens to you, how do you want that to play out? I mean,
right.
I'm curious, do you have any suggestions on those conversations?
Well, I mean, everybody knows what a financial advisor is, or probably if they don't have one, they're familiar with the process and familiar with a financial advisor. as with most difficult things in life, the hardest thing to do is just sit down and have the conversation. So,
Yeah.
oftentimes majority of the time I work with the family's kids or the loved one's children, as opposed to actually working with the senior themselves. And we're oftentimes wondering, well, is this what mom would like, or is this what dad would like? We're assuming that, well, we think that she would like this environment, or that think that she would like this level of care or this particular community or this particular
I don't
circumstance.
really know.
But we don't really know because they didn't have those conversations. So it's just one of those things that it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not, nobody wakes up
Yeah.
and says, I want to talk about how I want to be cared for when I can't care for myself anymore.
I know. Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I've been going through some of that myself. So, I mean, what are some of the most common conditions or scenarios that people would like seek your services out?
Yeah, so the most common scenario, and it's just like we just talked about, is that we get to the crisis moment where everybody's, we've just pushed it off, we haven't talked about it, and then mom or dad falls, and then typically a falls in place, or they've had a health incident, they've had their blood pressure spike out of control and collapsed or something like that, and now we're scrambling to try to find a situation or find the best place for that particular loved one. So the crisis moment is definitely the most common situation that we work with on a
Right. And
daily
that's the
basis.
worst time to do planning. I mean, everybody's under duress. It's like a
Yeah.
stressful time.
Stressful time. Everybody's, like you talked about, the sandwich generation. People, their kids are in school, or they're dealing with taking care of their children or their grandchildren, and they still got to take care of their parents, and all these decisions have to be made very quickly in some sort of rush.
Yeah. In fact, I've seen a lot of situations where like mom or dad's in the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
they're caring for them, and all of a sudden the hospital's like, well, we're done.
Yeah, that's
Coming
exactly.
home. And they're like, but he can't ambulate. I'm just saying he, but like the person can't ambulate. They can't take care of themselves. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And the hospital's like, well, we can't do anything else. This is just like the new baseline.
Yep.
And you're like sitting there like, well, okay, well, what do I do next? So you don't
Yep.
even really know what resources are available at that point.
Yep.
So,
The insurances are definitely quick to cut you off. And there's a common misconception that, just because you have Medicare, people think that, well, I can cover it for 100 days in rehab under Medicare.
right.
Well, that's not necessarily totally the case,
Because
because
if they don't see you improving, they just end it, right?
right, if they don't see improvement and if you plateau, the insurance is going to cut you off and say you're on your own to either privately pay for rehab here, or you need to find a different living arrangement.
So maybe, and I know this might be a little bit off of like, I don't know what subject, but I guess the question would be, say you are in that situation, since most people approach it when this happens, I don't think that, I would love to think that like our educating clients is going to make them make better decisions. But at the end of the day, a lot of people are still going to do that, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
let's say that point comes. Then what is your recommendation on how to proceed from there? Because I think sometimes people just don't even know what the next step is. Like, so mom or dad, they don't want to bring them home, or they can't, or
Yeah.
they feel like they can't care for them, but they're coming out of the hospital. What do you do? Call you?
Yeah.
I mean,
So basically call me up, and either I would come and meet you somewhere, or we just have a lengthy phone conversation. Now with COVID, I spend a lot of time on the phone, not really too much in person, but we have a lengthy phone conversation, and I get to know the entire picture of what's going on with your particular circumstance and your particular loved one. So, we talk about okay, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, we talk about, where this particular loved one's at, what types of care needs this individual needs. Do they just need a little bit of help getting dressed, maybe taking a shower, or does this person need help, like physically need one or two people to get them up out of a bed,
Right.
into a chair? Do they need help ambulating to and from a meal? So what type of care does an individual need? And then also, ties into you guys, particularly is the financial side of it. All these places charge a certain fee for their services and that care for that individual. So we have to talk about the finances and be open with that and understand how that affects things, for sure.
Right. And different people in different situations are going to be able to pay for it differently. I mean, if someone's qualifying for Medicaid, that's a much different story than paying out of pocket or utilizing a long-term care policy or something like that. Correct?
Absolutely. Totally. Absolutely.
So really the first step is understanding what their care needs are, talking to someone like you, maybe to even understand what the scope of those, like what the options are. And then even talking to someone like us about
Right.
the financial end of it. Okay. I mean,
Yep.
I honestly just, I don't know. I mean, it's one of
Right.
those situations.
No,
so.
it's, and then you get into the rehab and you think, I got 100 days, and then the social worker calls you and says, all right, he's being cut tomorrow and you got to find a place in 3 days. So the sooner they have a conversation, the better.
Yeah. Do a lot of people just go home for a couple days and figure it out and they just like muddle through it, or?
Sometimes definitely had that situation where people want to try it at home. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
wants to be at home. I
course.
haven't come across one family that says I can't wait to move into a senior community, but people need care, and the communities nowadays are drastically different than what senior communities were, 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So
Yeah.
they've definitely come a long ways with the design and the accommodations and the actual feel for the residents.
Can you talk to us about the difference between like nursing home and assisted living? Because I think there's, the word nursing home, I think has a stigma attached to it for sure.
Yeah.
I try not to use that word because I think
Right.
people like want to run the other direction with their hair on fire when they hear that.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so when it comes to assisted living and nursing home, really from a clinical perspective, there's really only three things that will clinically make somebody have to go into a nursing home. Those are the use of a ventilator, the use of a feeding tube, and the use of a continuous IV. So those are really, from a clinical perspective, those are really the only things that's going to require somebody to go to a nursing home. So when it
Versus
comes
assisted living or
versus,
personal care or whatever, they
yep,
call
yep.
them all different things, but
Yeah, and that's when it comes to the higher acuity things, some of these assisted livings and personal care residences can take very high levels of acuity all the way up into bedbound. Some of them can even take bedbound. So it's a much different feel and much different environment than being in a nursing home, as opposed to some of the personal care residents that's a little bit more low key and less institutionalized. So,
okay.
but for financial reasons, most of the time people financially qualify for a nursing home, as opposed to they can't afford paying for personal care or assisted living. So, and in the state of Pennsylvania, which is different than other states, so if you're listening from a different state, you might have to check with there. But in the state of Pennsylvania, there's no assisted living Medicaid, and that can be different in other states such as Ohio, Florida, where there is assisted living Medicaid in those states. So
Can you explain that a little more about, so in other words, Medicaid would pay for a nursing home,
right,
but not for assisted living.
right. Yep, Medicaid would pay for a nursing home, but not for assisted living. That's the case here.
So you'd have to pay out of pocket for that.
Yep, all personal care or assisted living is privately paid for in the state of Pennsylvania.
So do some people who could be in assisted living end up in a nursing home?
Absolutely, yep, because they need that little level of care. They need that little oversight, that little, help with a shower, help with a bath,
Mm-hmm.
that type of things, and they just aren't safe to do it at home, but they don't have the financial resources to pay for it, so they do end up in a nursing home.
So even if they are out of financial resources, which basically means they can qualify for Medicaid, they still might end up in a nursing home because they don't, right, I get it, okay.
Yep.
And I think it's a pretty big fear for people.
Right, yep.
So planning for this financially and, also through just picking the right place is pretty important ahead of time.
Yep, and then when the financial side of it also, when you look at communities, there are certain communities that allow for benevolence care and benevolence funds. So if you can fund the community, fund it for 2 to 3 years, 4 years, if you then run out of money, the community won't kick you out and make you go to a nursing home. So there are some of those options there too. And again, it's just knowing which ones are that way and have those abilities to be able to do that. So most people would think some of the communities that are associated with, have a religious affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those offer those benevolent funds to be able to provide that benefit if the individual does run out of money.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about, if you don't mind, what a typical community placement would look like, and then what are like the key things you would evaluate? I mean, I would imagine there's sort of like not a star system, but you have like 7 or 8 things you look for in a community to make sure it's like the right fit and it's a good community.
Yeah. So
kind of 2 questions there. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's when I meet with the family and we talk with the family, we really want to look at, like I talked about before, the types of care they need. Do they need help getting a shower? Do they need help getting dressed? Are they having, incontinence issues and that sort of thing? You need help with that type of stuff. You know, and really going down the list and really determining, you know, what's the full picture of care, right? And because that's important, you know, money's one side of it, but you got to have the care side of it too, because we don't want to be considering communities where the person needs a high level of care and this community doesn't offer that level of care. So first of all, we talk about the care levels, and then we dig into the finances, and then from there, what I do is I help families. I will initiate the tours, and I will actually be on tours with individuals to help them, you know, navigate that process and help them understand and just be there with them when we go look at communities.
It's a really laborious process.
Yes, yes.
I actually did it with a client once. We looked at like 6 places, and it was exhausting, honestly. And I mean, I learned a lot through the process.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of decisions to make, and they all have different packages and benefits.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, how many communities do you have agreements with in the Pittsburgh area, or the greater Pittsburgh, like tri-state area?
I mean, I'm well over 100 in the Pittsburgh area.
Wow, I didn't realize there were that many.
Just in the South Hills alone, there's like 55.
Yeah, so, I can see that. There's one on like every corner around here. But.
Right. So, no, there's a ton of communities out there, and like you said, they all have different cost structures. They all have different, you know, fees, and you know what's included in the price, what's not included in the price.
Do you help the client understand that?
Absolutely. You know, like I said, that's why it's important for me to be there on that tour. I mean, nowadays we're doing FaceTime tours and Zoom tours, but you know, when COVID goes away, you know, I'll be there in person and just be there and make sure that they're getting a full understanding of what what's involved with the community.
Yeah, because there's a lot of choices. They have to choose like where they're going to live. Like, so there's all these usually like apartment choices, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then they have to understand like what are the levels of care, because some of them have multiple, I guess, like chassis of care. So like the first might be independent living, then it's like assisted living, and then it kind of goes up to there. And so there's like a scope of service that's provided, and there's all kinds of costs that need to be discussed there too, right?
Yep, exactly.
And then there's like all the features and benefits.
Yep.
And then there's, so it's really understanding the needs for care. Also probably understanding like the community itself, and especially if they're not in an emergency situation and they're just looking to do it, and they're on the independent side, like how are they going to be happy there and fit in before you know, they would need any care.
Yep, absolutely. No, definitely help them navigate through all that, because some people it's an all-inclusive pricing. You know, in some communities they have a room price plus a care charge plus a medication charge, you know, so it can get overwhelming, to say the least, in terms of trying to keep them all straight. So
yeah. Well, and I know, I mean, specifically with COVID right now, I mean, this is a really challenging time for these facilities, is it not?
Oh, definitely. There's definitely a challenge for them, for sure. I mean, everybody, you know, it is, you see the ones on the news, and those obviously aren't good situations when you see them on the news. But I can tell you that, you know, at least in the assisted living and the communities in the area here, they're really working hard to try to make sure that their residents are staying safe and healthy. And, you know, if somebody does get a case, then it's isolated and it's just restricted to one individual. So there's definitely strong protocols and things in place now, that we've been in this for a long time to try to alleviate that, for sure.
Because I think a lot of people in this situation now are very hesitant to send their loved ones to a facility.
Absolutely. You know, and it's with the vaccines that's coming out and everything. I've been hearing, and I just, even before this call here today, somebody said that they were going to be getting a vaccine, their first round of vaccine, starting next week. So, you know, I've been hearing with the communities, at least here in the Pittsburgh area, that anywhere between next week to the first week in February, in the second week in February, that they're going to start getting their first rounds of vaccines, because the vaccines have all worked their way through the skilled nursings and the rehabs and the nursing homes in the area here. And now they're starting to pick up with the assisted living and personal care residences. So that's definitely some good news to come around the corner to try to get us back to some set of normalcy.
It seems a little difficult for the families though, because at times it's not their choice, and they would administer care at home if at all possible, but there's no way that they could find a way to give some of this care, because it does have levels of skill that come with it. So
Yep. And as your parents age, you also age as well. So it becomes increasingly difficult, and the caregiver does take a brunt of the physical physicalness of taking care of another individual. It's just hard on the body.
Thanks for reminding us, Ben, that we're all getting older. It's supposed to be about
I
this.
know my birthday's next week. I'm like, no.
Melissa's turning 30 again. Yeah.
I am. That's exactly what's happening. I mean,
We're very excited for her.
incredible.
It's a gift that I just.
So I guess another question I have is, you help place people that are looking for facilities that would be taken care of by Medicaid and private placement, correct?
So in terms of Medicaid placements, I mean, I definitely help with that. And Medicaid, especially now with COVID, is extremely difficult to find placement for Medicaid just because of if the community has a COVID case and are they taking admissions and do they have Medicaid availability? And, it's just definitely a challenge right now with Medicaid. And it's definitely been some difficult family conversations to try to get somebody help that's under Medicaid. But
yeah, I guess that's one of the things I wouldn't mind some clarification on, just from the standpoint of, because you already did clarify like the difference between a nursing home and assisted living. But I guess in my mind, I think of like, so say you're at Asbury Heights. I'm sure that's a place you have an agreement with, right?
Yeah.
Pretty fancy place. It's nice, it's not Providence Point, but it's but it's not Concordia. So sorry, in my mind, like I always think like, here's your Chevy, your Honda, and your Cadillac, and in that order, it would probably be like Providence Point, Asbury Heights, Concordia. I don't know, maybe that's right.
It depends upon the individual, that's
right. But I mean, like, that's just how, for me, I compartmentalize things like that. So let's say a client is private, you're going to place them, a family comes to you and they want to go to like a Providence Point. Typically, do all those facilities also accept Medicaid?
So what Providence Point is, they have their benevolence programs to where they're part of Baptist homes in the Baptist Society. So Providence Point, if you do go in there independently, you need to financially qualify to move in there.
Right.
In terms of some of the other, like Concordia and Asbury,
things financially qualify to get into some of the places, you're not going to end up being on Medicaid anywhere.
Right. It's going to take you quite a few years to spend on that money. And they do have those benevolence funds to pick those up. All three of those ones that you listed have those.
Okay.
So, but you do have to financially qualify.
Okay. So you do mostly private placements though, where
it is majority of it's private placement. Yes. Private pay. Yes.
Okay. And that would be either the individual or the family paying for the care.
Yep.
What's a typical range?
So
I know it's pretty different, but
yeah, it can be drastically different. If you looked at the statistics across the state, they say around $4,000 is an average monthly cost for an assisted living community in the state. And again, it goes back to what we talked about in terms of the care level. Obviously, a one-bedroom apartment is going to be more expensive than a studio apartment, and even the places that offered a shared room is going to help with the cost. So. For somebody
there's flexibility there to try to control some of that cost.
Yeah, there definitely is flexibility, and there is some ways to try to conserve some of those funds to be able to live longer there.
So this is probably a little off subject again too. Well, not off subject, but I'm sure so I actually recently had an experience where a client was in a facility in these basically on the independent living side. And then moved into, has been back and forth then between assisted living, which they happen to call personal care, and then also in the healthcare side too. It keeps moving around. It doesn't look like she's going to get back to independent living. So when someone transitions from like independent to assisted to like full-time nursing care, that can occur often all in one facility. Is that true?
It doesn't. It can occur in one community.
It can.
Right.
Not all the communities offer that.
Not all the communities offer that. No. That the person's fortunate that they have a health center there if they need rehab, that you can go to that individual health center to get that care that they need.
But the costs are all different too. So like independent, so this client was on the this independent living side. She had like a monthly rent. But then when she moved into personal care, it went up because clearly the cost of, so, people need to understand all that, and you help them navigate figuring that out. And I guess the one thing that's difficult is when you're evaluating these facilities, there's so many kind of forward-looking questions you have to ask, right? And you know all of the answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ask.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, well, what happens if they get sick? What if they need more care? How do the costs change? What if they need extra things, right?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And that's definitely all the things that need to take into consideration as well.
Okay.
So.
All right. Sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions.
No,
Probably more
you're
than
good.
you
No, it's
anticipated.
good. It's good. I like it. I like
What are
it.
some of those extra things? I mean, what are the things that you normally encourage people to budget for that they don't normally think about, and they say, "Oh yeah, I never." You know.
Well, I
Oh, and
mean,
grandma's haircut. We got to give grandma
well,
her
yeah, I mean, just senior living in general. I mean, people, like I said, the statistics state that people are going to need senior care. You know, and our people that, you know, don't need senior care and have lived a long time in their home and, you know, live to the 90s in their home and then pass away. But, you know, it's statistically that, you know, probable that people are going to need to plan for this in some sort of way. So just
Yeah.
having that cost in the back, you know, having that, you know, working with your advisors to plan for that, to have a better chance of a financial successful future is extremely important stuff. And so, because the nitpicky stuff, I mean, a haircut, who charges for laundry, who doesn't, who charges for a phone, who doesn't. I mean, that's when we get down to the decision, that's important, but in general, financially planning for it is the big part.
Yeah, well, that's what I found, and a lot of clients underestimate what some of the
Yeah.
extra costs are going to be. They say, "Oh, well, this is my monthly rent." Well, if you do need haircuts, if you need someone to start, if you're on the independent side and you need someone to come in to do some laundry and do stuff like that, guess what? There's an extra bill there, and it can
Yeah.
be. I've seen it be $200, $300, $400, $500, $1,000 a month.
Mhm.
If you're on the independent side and you're getting those extra services. Now, if you move into the more assisted living side, the rent goes up, but it's kind of more included. All that stuff
Right.
is part of the deal. So
Yeah.
it's really important to understand those costs ahead of time. How do you feel, you know, on the planning side for us? This is a really difficult thing for advisors. Clients don't want to talk about it, honestly. I mean, it's not fun to talk about.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of tools in our tool belts. I mean, the one thing that we had in our tool belts and that we still have are clients having and purchasing long-term care policies.
Yep.
What that basically does is allows them to purchase a policy. They pay a premium mostly for their life, and it provides a pool of money for this kind of care if they need it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're great. There's some challenges with them though. I mean, one is they aren't cheap. Two is the premiums go up. And three is I think the industry kind of has a bad rap, and people in general don't like the idea that if I put premium into this and I don't need it, I'm not, it's use it or lose it, right?
Right. Yep. Yep.
It's a pure insurance. And I always tell clients this and remind them that we also pay for our health insurance every year. And if we don't fall and break our leg, we don't get our premiums back. And we also pay for our term insurance every year. And if we don't die, we don't get it back. And the same thing with car insurance. But for some reason, I mean, this is a hang up, I think, for a lot of people mentally. And I get it. I mean, it's just not a subject we want to talk about. But there's that tool. And then there's the legal planning that we would do with like an elder law firm, which I know you're familiar with. But I'm getting to a question here for you, I promise. I'm curious to know, is it easier to do this planning for families that have long-term care policies, or do you find that it doesn't make a big difference, or that have worked with an attorney? Because I'm really just asking your opinion. I know I'm throwing that out. We haven't discussed that, but
in terms of, I mean, it definitely can alleviate some of the stress of the financial burden that this is going to put on the estate if there's a long-term care policy there. You know, it's hard to put a blanket statement around long-term care policy because they're all so different and they all have different clauses and, you know, exhaustion periods and that sort of.
A reason. Do people that get those monies, is it beneficial? Does it help them be able to do better?
Like I said, it definitely alleviates the stress of that financial burden. You know, I had a gal that basically had Social Security, but then also had a very low paying long-term care policy. And, you know, between those two small things, we're able to get her into a lower cost personal care home instead of a nursing home. So
it could be the difference there.
Yeah, so it could be the difference in between having to go Medicaid or being in a personal care home.
So that's kind of the fight, it sounds like, is getting you the best that you may be able to afford with your resources that you have. Because like you said, if you don't, you get relegated potentially to a nursing facility that may or may not be specifically the best place for you.
You have less choice, right? And if you don't have the funds to pay for it, then you definitely have less choice. And that's
for sure. That is
that a fair statement?
That is definitely a fair statement.
Yeah. because most of our clients want choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and I agree with you. I have yet to hear anybody say, I can't wait to go to the nursing home. It's usually the opposite. Like, that's my worst nightmare. And they also will say, I feel like there's two situations here that we're talking about. And maybe you can also clarify to make sure that you do help place both. One is where I say, like, we have a client and they have a loved one that they're helping do this for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's their worst nightmare often to put their loved one in a nursing home. It's heart-wrenching, right? And
Right.
they maybe can't handle it at home, or for whatever reason, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, maybe it's not even the best thing for that person. But then there's the client themselves, which is thinking, I want to plan for the future. I mean, I have clients now that are saying, well, I want to actually place myself in one of these places where it has the full spectrum of care.
Full
Do you
continuum.
also help with that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I mean,
so it is both situations.
It is both situations. Yeah. Yep. I've definitely helped fully independent people move into the continuums.
But make the choices.
But having those choices that are out there, because there's definitely choices for that
Oh, it's
too.
overwhelming. It absolutely no doubt is. Somebody like you, I wish 7 years ago when I did this, because I probably spent like 90 hours of my life doing it. I wish I knew you then, because it was a lot. And I learned a lot through the process. So I'm glad I did it. And I think I got a lot of insight into that, individual situation. But it certainly is not a service that I think was offered at that time that I knew about. So,
yeah.
Okay. Huh. What else? Joe, can you think of anything else that on our clients' minds when it comes to this? I mean, this is probably the toughest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is one of our messier problems we deal with as CFPs, and Ben, I think you'd agree with this. There is no silver bullet here. I mean, every single situation out of Melissa, I'd argue, hundreds, if not thousands of plans that you, I, and Josh have written over the years. This is always a tough question. I've found some success taking the conversation at the estate level when we're doing estate planning and carrying the conversation forward. I think somebody like a Ben or somebody like your advisor, like us, can help take that the next level. So if we're already talking about, if I can't make a decision, here's what I would like to happen. Let's just take it that next level. If you got the bandwidth for it. I know these conversations are really, really tough, but I mean, I think we could all agree, you save a lot of heartache on the back end with this stuff.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I know it's heart-wrenching, like you said, Melissa, making that decision that I can't facilitate this care, but the heartache on the back end can be much more substantial in a lot of ways. So talk to that, Ben, a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say too, in terms of alleviating some of the heartache and having the tough conversations, goes back to what I talked about with communities nowadays of being they're much more updated. I mean, a community, if you look out by the airport, Pittsburgh Airport, they took the Embassy Suites and made it into a senior community.
Did they really?
So you walk into this and it used to be a hotel. So you walk in and you feel like you're in a hotel.
Yeah.
So it's not, your grandma's mom being put in a home and just being put in a room and, left there. I mean, these are beautiful places that people can thrive in these years and have a great time and be around people that are like-minded to them.
You end up in a much better, even living longer, because they have that interaction, everything.
Absolutely. So
I know. And I don't mean to keep going back to this example, but this client I have that I've literally been through the whole process with her, and I'm still going through it with her on the other end now. And she's thanked me so many times. After she moved in, it took her about a year to settle, because it was hard, because she left her house and she was really it was really hard for her. I mean, she was a little unhappy at first, but after a year or so, when she made friends and everything, she said, Melissa, if I wouldn't have done this, I don't know what I would be doing. I have friends. I get to go to meals with them. I have things I can do. I get to have my writer's club. I love my apartment. It's so much better than me being worried about everything at my house. I mean, it really was, she thrived in that environment probably much longer. I mean, she was so isolated at her house, and it was so much to do, and there were steps and all that other stuff. So, I think it can be a really, really good thing. And people just get this thing in their head that these are horrible places to go. I mean,
exactly.
And I'm sure, I hate to say this. I mean, there probably are some places, but that I don't think that's the norm anymore. So maybe we should see if there's any questions. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. If anyone has a question, down at the bottom, you can raise your hand, or you can do a chat on the side there. We'd be happy to take, some Q&A. I don't see any. You can click on Q&A.
And these will be available after. So if you do have a question after we post this, make sure to email us at info@steinwealth.com. We'll get back to you, whether it's Ben or Melissa or myself or Josh, we'll get back to you. So
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
And I guess while everybody's thinking about questions, I was going to say my contact information. If people wanted to reach out, my phone number is 412-853-5877. You can also go to my website. It's oasissenioriradvisors.com/South Hills. And as a franchise system, I should have mentioned this. I've purchased the South Hills territory. I haven't purchased the North Hills and out east yet, but I definitely have familiarity with the communities all around the city. So just because it says South Hills doesn't mean that's just the way I'm at.
Oh, that's good to know, because people do get that impression sometimes.
Yep. So
and actually, I mean, on that note, what we plan to do is send out a follow-up email. We always do that these webinars. And if there's anything like specific you want us to include on there, besides, I mean, your contact information will be on there, of course, but also there's a couple things I want to include. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen like the Genworth study of care, and they also have a nice pamphlet on how to start these conversations.
Nice.
So I think I'm going to attach it to that, because I think that would be a nice thing for people to see as a follow-up piece. And certainly, I mean, anyone's welcome to, call us with questions, call Ben. I mean, hopefully this was really informative today and you learned something that you didn't know before.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that anybody wants to add? Is there any other questions out there?
can I just do a real quick rehash of some of the points I got here? So Ben, talking with folks like yourself, that is taken care of. If we do buy a service through the facility, you don't directly charge. So that's interesting. And for our clients, that's interesting. When we look at these situations, right, we have the fall, what have you, I'm sorry, you had a turn of phrase you used,
like the more immediate, like
crisis moment.
Crisis moment. Thank you.
Yeah.
If God forbid we have a crisis moment, right? First things first, we have to assess the needs of the person, see what types of needs, what this care flow is going to look like potentially, because it can change. We're going to review the financial situation, make sure we know where we stand. What are we looking at? How much is this potentially going to cost? And then we go with somebody like you and review options. Or a financial advisor like Melissa that'll go spend 90 hours with us. Like we go look at.
I don't do that for everybody.
Melissa, I know you would do that for anybody.
I probably would, yeah.
So, and then it's a matter of what level of care is appropriate for us, what level of care can we afford and are willing to pay for. And then it's a personal decision at that point. It's kind of like, sounds like shopping for a house, really what it sounds like. I mean,
pretty much.
It seems like this care thing has gone from, it's not just the care, it's your community. And the studies that we see coming out, the more active the people are, the more engaged in their community they are, the higher the quality of life. So, and then the last little thing I took away is that this is complex for everybody. It's not just me as an advisor, my peers. This is a complex situation. It warrants time to talk through the emotions of it. And there is no silver bullet.
No,
I don't mean that as a bad pun. Yeah. That's good. Is that fair? I mean, to reiterate.
No, that's definitely fair way of assessing it for sure.
Cool. Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Good. I think we got a lot here, guys. That's a good piece for everybody.
Ben, did you want to add anything?
Just, it's never too early to have a conversation. Just even if I just talk to somebody on the phone for 30 minutes and there's a better understanding, then that makes my day. And I know that person's better educated. So
that's really good. And we really appreciate all of your time today. Thank you very much. This was very informative and really a unique, I think, a unique service. I mean, people don't know this is out there, and our job is to bring resources to our clients and let people know it's there. So thank you for this, and let us know if there's anything else. But I think we'll call it a wrap then and let everyone get on to their day. I think a couple people here live in Arizona, so it's probably a lot nicer out there. I see people on the list here. But at least it's sunny here in Pittsburgh today. It's not gloomy. So look, everybody be safe. Happy New Year. I guess, is it too late to keep saying that? Probably not. I always say it the whole way through January.
Right. Optimism, Melissa. Optimism. Happy New Year.
We're here if you need anything, and everyone be well. So thank you.
Thanks everybody for joining.
Until next time. Bye.